We are sitting down with the attorney representing a potential key witness in the Sean Combs criminal case because he is right now in a mounting legal fight with the music mogul's sons. Christian and Quincy Combs are reportedly trying to stop the sale of a book about their late mother, Kim Porter, and the accusations are flying back and forth. We're going to get into it right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Another interesting side wrinkle in the Sean Diddy Combs case we got to talk about. You remember Courtney Burgess? We've talked about him before. He is the purported witness who testified in front of the grand jury, currently hearing new evidence in the Sean Combs criminal case. If you recall, Burgess went on Banfield on News Nation, and he revealed that he was given 11 flash drives that contain alleged sex tapes involving Combs and celebrities. And he said, of the 8 celebrities on the tapes, those who are victims of Sean Combs, they're not perpetrators, victims, he said 2 or 3 were minors, which, as you know, is consistent with a number of allegations in the civil lawsuits that Sean Combs is currently facing. To be clear, though, Combs is currently not criminally charged with anything with respect to minors. That could change, but right now he's just charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, transportation to engage in prostitution, but all with respect to adult victims. If there's a superseding indictment, he gets hit with new charges, possibly about victims. We shall see. But this is what brings me to what we're talking about right now. So, Mr. Burgess has claimed that he got these flash drives from the late girlfriend of Sean Combs, Kim Porter, who, as we know, tragically died several years back from what authorities concluded was lobar pneumonia. And that is despite the fact that there have been rumors, both online and in the media, that there is something more to her death. And that, to be clear, totally unsubstantiated. That has been debunked. We've talked about it here on Sidebar multiple times. But putting that to the side, here is the other thing with Mr. Burgess. He apparently says he owns the rights to a book that was reportedly based on the alleged memoir of Kim Porter. In fact, according to TMZ, Burgess' phone was seized by the feds, and on it was a copy of a flash drive with material that was used in this book. Here's the problem. Christian and Quincy Combs, these are the sons of Diddy and Kim Porter. Quincy's actually adopted by Diddy. But they are reportedly fighting back, and they have sent Burgess a cease and desist letter to prevent the further sale of this book. They argue this is just an attempt to capitalize on Porter's fame and that they own the rights to her IP, her intellectual property, like her diary entries, her potential manuscript. As her heirs, they own it. And they also want an accounting of current sales of the book. To be clear, though, they aren't acknowledging that there is, in fact, a long-lost memoir from their mother. In fact, they've actually denied that before when there was a similar book, a derivative work, we'll talk about that, published by this guy named Chris Todd on Amazon. They were adamantly fighting against that. They said that their mother wouldn't write this. But what they're basically saying is if something should exist, they own it. Burgess has responded, saying he owns the copyright in the book, that Porter gave him the rights to this manuscript, that the brothers are making, quote, a pathetic attempt, a, quote, desperate ploy to extort him, and this shows how bad their financial situation is, and he reportedly even suggests that Sean Combs is probably behind this. So a lot of back and forth between both sides, and I want to sort it out and at least get one side of the story on this. So with that, I want to bring in Ariel Mitchell. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's great to meet you. So the first question I had when I was reading about this, is this book from your client the same book as the one that was published by Chris Todd a few months ago? That was the one that was on Amazon before it was removed by Amazon. What's the connection there?
Yeah, so Chris did get the book from Courtney. Courtney has a more thorough copy of the book. When Chris published the book that was on Amazon, it was edited. So some of the passages were removed, some of the pictures were removed, and I think there was like a forward or something that was added to the book. So it is a different version, but from the same, what in copyright law is called derivative work. So it derives from that work that Courtney has.
And just to be clear, Courtney's work, Courtney's book, is it currently being sold anywhere?
I'm not exactly sure. I believe Courtney has a, I was about to say, here's a woo woo, welcome to downtown Miami. But I believe he is selling it on a website. I only came into that knowledge when I received the cease and desist letter from Quincy and Christian.
Got it. And in terms of the content of the book, what is this book about, the one from your client?
So I haven't taken the time to read the book
Okay.
either, but to my understanding, it's Kim Porter's memoir. So it's basically Kim Porter's stories. I haven't read. I shouldn't say that. I haven't read the entire book.
Sure,
I
sure.
have read several excerpts from the book, several pages from the book. I haven't had time to sit down and read it in its entirety. But to my understanding, it purports to be from Kim Porter about experiences Kim Porter had.
And why do you think Christian and Quincy are so opposed to this coming out? Because they were opposed to the Chris Todd, as you said, derivative work coming out. They opposed to this. What is it about this piece of work that they're so opposed to?
Well, first it's talking about their father. And, for even Quincy, that's his stepfather, but that's really the only father he knows. So, and then Christian, that's his doppelganger. Like Christian and Diddy look exactly alike. So, and then you think about the other piece of it. Their father is the one who gave them money, wealth, fame. So you want to protect that at all costs, even if you know your father did something bad or wrong. I also feel like they don't have any identities without their father. So for their father to go down for this, and what child wants to think this about their parent? Think that their parent was this kind of heinous monster. So I think we have to maybe put ourselves in position how we would feel if this was one of our parents, and what would we do in this situation?
Hey, so I just want to jump away from this update in the Combs case for a quick minute because I got a question for all of you out there. I know this is super random, but are any of you business owners out there? Maybe those of you thinking of starting a business. The reason I ask is because we have this sponsor. It's known as Odoo, and it's a free all-in-one business management software. What it does, it provides you with a range of applications that helps with the day-to-day of owning a business. So they have this projects app, and what's cool about it is there are multiple views in it, like the Kanban view that organizes tasks by stage, or the Gantt view that gives you a timeline of your tasks. Seriously, so simple, easy to organize things. Also, in the Projects app, you can directly bill customers according to time spent on certain tasks, which is such a time saver. So right now, you can click our link, odoo.com/LC Sidebar 6, and you can try Odoo and their Projects app for free right now today. Does this memoir, alleged memoir, does it suggest that Sean Combs was abusive towards Kim Porter? Does it suggest that does it amplify this message that we've seen online that there's more to Kim Porter's death than meets the eye? I just want to be clear about what this book from your client really says.
So again, I'm going to reiterate, I have not read the
Sure.
entirety of the book. But
Okay.
from what I have read, it does support the allegations that have been made by Cassie, the allegations that have been made by the federal government, and the allegations that have been made by my clients, Tyrone Blackburn's clients, Tony Busby's clients. It's everybody is saying the same thing. And Kim Porter, I feel like we were only willing to hear these things once Cassie came out, and now we are starting to see from Kim Porter's experience that
Right.
these were the exact same experiences.
So the main question that people would have here is why would Kim Porter give your client this manuscript? What was that relationship? They were close enough where she would give him her memoir, her diary entries. Why would she do that?
So, to my understanding, Courtney was really good friends with Tupac. I'm always trying to explain this. So in New York, we all know the East Coast West Coast beef, right?
Sure, sure.
We all have some knowledge of it. It's only cursory. So you have to imagine on the East Coast, there was two factions. There was the bad boy faction, and then there was Death Row East. So Death Row was starting to encroach upon Diddy's territory in New York. And there are a lot of people in New York who didn't like Diddy, who didn't want to rock with the bad boy East Coast, side of the East Coast, West Coast beef. So there were a bunch of people in New York, a faction, who were West Coast, East Coasters, if you will. And Courtney was one of those people. So, to my understanding, Courtney knew Kim through Tupac and Courtney's a industry insider, A&R, or a record exec who brought different people to labels to help them get into the music industry. So he knew producers, managers, all these people in the music industry. And one day he was talking to a friend who was with Kim, and Kim was like, "Who are you talking to?" And he said, "I'm talking to Courtney B." And she said, "Oh, let me talk to him," because they knew each other through Tupac, and said to Courtney, "I got something because for you, I know you'll know what to do with it." And that's the next day is when Courtney got the flash drives, and one of the flash drives had the book on it. So I believe that if we're going to believe, let's say, that Kim really wanted this book to get out, and she knew there were only certain people she can trust because there were more people in Diddy's pocket than were not in Diddy's pocket, why wouldn't you go to his enemy, Diddy's enemy, which is people with the Tupac faction? And if you really want this information to get out, because anybody else is not going to get that information because their loyalty will always lie to Diddy. So I think, just me using my brain and the information I have been given and my understanding just culturally about what is going on, because it's my culture, it makes sense to me how Courtney ended up with this.
You don't anticipate that this is going to escalate into some sort of lawsuit and this going to court? And it sounds like if it is, you're ready to fight back against it.
Not only fight back, we're ready to countersue for defamation and other things, other torts. But I wish I would invite them. If you're watching this, please, I beg of you, please sue us. That'll be the best day of my life and the worst mistake you'll ever make.
Why is the issue of Kim Porter and this book and Courtney maybe trying to publish it, why is that coming out now?
Well, I think what initially happened was when the book was first published on Amazon by Chris Todd.
Right.
So that kind of created, it was number one for weeks on Amazon, actually, number one bestseller.
Yep.
To my understanding, at the last count, sold almost like 30,000 copies in that range. So it was really selling. So then there was a time where Chris was doing all these interviews, and then there was something going on behind the scenes, because I had known Chris since August. That's when I initially met Chris, and I didn't meet Courtney until 2 days before, on the 31st. I didn't meet him until October 29th. So I didn't know who he was. Chris did represent the entire time, even with the book, because we did start talking about, first he came to me like, "Oh, I have some information that may be relevant to the cases you have against Diddy." And that kind of morphed into, "Well, we have this stuff. We don't know what to do or how to use it. Can we get some legal advice or direction?" And I'm like, we don't want to tread on extortion, just kind of trying to get an understanding for what they had and what they understood. But Chris never told me about Courtney. He told me he had a partner, but never told me who Courtney was. And then all of a sudden one day I see Chris is doing interviews about the book. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then shortly thereafter, I get a call from Courtney saying that he just was served with a summons by the federal government. And then I went back and saw an interview that Courtney had done on October 20th, where he is now stepping out of the shadows, saying that he's the one who had the tapes. He was the one who had the book. And that's how all of this came out. And I feel that
Right.
that interview Courtney did October 20th is what led to the summons and the subpoena from the federal government. Because now, if he's saying he has all of these things, he's now, and I think something no one is keeping in mind. We've seen all of these victims file civil lawsuits, right? But why hasn't the government called them as witnesses before the grand jury, right? You would think those would be people that would be called.
Do you know for sure? Do you know for sure they haven't?
Well, I don't, to my understanding, at least none of my clients have been called.
Sure,
And
fair enough.
I know other lawyers, and I've talked to them, and none of their, at least I'll say this, none of their clients who already have active lawsuits have been called. Now, there
Okay.
might be some other people who have been called, but those people are not plaintiffs in a civil litigation. However, with Courtney doesn't have a lawsuit against Diddy. He's not a victim of Diddy. So I think the other part of this is being an unbiased third party. So the government is really the credibility that they felt that he had and the information that they believed him to have based on what he said in an interview on October 20th. They issued a summons for him 4 days later. They issued a summons for him and a subpoena October 24th, and they didn't serve it to him till October 28th. And then I talked to him October 29th, and then we went to the grand jury testimony on the 31st. So that was like the progression of those things. But I think it's just a culmination of the government is trying to look for all relevant information, people who purport to have relevant information, especially people who can't come across as untainted because they don't have a bias. And, you know, every civil litigant does have a bias in seeing him go to jail. We all want to see him go to jail, not only for the benefits of our cases, but because our clients were really injured. And the ultimate penalty is having your freedom taken away. But Mr. Burgess isn't somebody who's unbiased. So I really feel like between his unbiased perspective and what he purported to said, he had, I know, and it also relates to what I said as well, because we had a separate hearing and the prosecutors brought up what I said in my interview as well.
By the way, what is, if you can tell us, any plans for him to come back to the grand jury to testify?
No, we were able to waive and close our testimony.
So in other words, what they wanted from him, they have at this point.
They have.
Yeah. Well, I am curious to see where this goes. Ariel Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you breaking it down for us. And so nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you too.
And by the way, I should tell you that Combs' legal team have called Courtney's claims false and outrageous and clearly just denying all of them. Thank you so much for joining us here on this episode of Sidebar, everybody. We really appreciate it. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.